Welcome back to the Run Up Show with Aris, where we discuss everything event production from A to Z. So today's topic is planning events post COVID-19. So planning live events post COVID-19. The world is opening back up. Events are being scheduled and put on the calendar, and everyone's excited to get back out there and do live events again. So some of the questions I've been getting are, what type of risk do we take, or what type of risk do we face, and how do we safely put on an event during these times? So that's what we're going to discuss today. Don't forget to give me a thumbs up, give me a like. If you have questions, leave them in the comments and I will make sure I answer them. So planning events post-COVID. So there are four things we're going to or there are four components of risk mitigation. We're only going to talk about the first one today, which is physical distancing. We're going to talk about the 2 through 4 in later weeks. So next week we'll do cleaning and what the requirements are regarding cleaning. And then the week after we're doing detection and protection. And that following week, we're going to have a whole show about communication and how you communicate, effectively communicate your COVID protection plan. Okay, so today's topic, we're only focusing on physical distancing and all the requirements regarding physical distancing. And of course, these will change depending on your venue and depending on your venue size, your event size. So let's go over the COVID risk assessment, okay? I'm going to go ahead and remove that banner so you can see the screen. So when you talk about when you're doing your COVID risk assessment, you want to make sure that your venue location is secure as well. So some of the things you have to consider is where your venue is located. What city and state is your venue located, and what are the COVID levels in that city and in that state? So if they're high COVID levels, you want to make sure that you really put together a really rock solid risk assessment plan. All right. You also want to consider where your attendees are coming from. If you have a large number of attendees that are coming from areas that have high risk, high COVID numbers, you want to make sure that you put things in place like rapid testing, or they have to get a COVID shot or a COVID test to present at the conference, or vaccine. Whatever your requirements are, you need to take into consideration where your attendees are coming from and also how old they are. The next one is, how many venues will you be using? If people have to move around from venue to venue, then you may want to get a COVID risk assessment for each venue. Make sure you have a plan for each venue. The second thing is, like I said, what risk group are your attendees in? Are they high risk? Is this a group for the older crowd, the older generation? If so, you need to factor that into your risk assessment. The next is your standard cleaning of your venue. How often is it cleaned? What are the requirements regarding cleaning? Your staff training. Do your staff know what to do if something happens? How are your staff trained? What kind of communications are you communicating to your staff? And not only your staff, but the staff of the venue. What are the trainings that the staff of the venue are getting? And then the last one is the COVID screening measures. Are you going to have, like I said, make sure that they have their rapid testing? Are you going to do on-site testing? Are you going to have thermal scanning? What are your COVID screening measures? Additionally, what is your communication, like I said, with your staff or with your attendees? Are you going to have your signage out? What kind of signs? And we're going to go over that. Your medical support. Are you going to have a medical team there? Depending on the size of your event, sometimes it may be required to have a medical team, or some type of medical support. Your food and beverage. What are you doing around food and beverage? Your hygiene measures, how often are you cleaning? And also your social media. If something happens and it gets out that you don't have, if there's a picture that's leaked and it has people not wearing masks, how are you going to handle that? Or if there's a picture that comes out on social media of your event and people are huddled together around a bar or huddled together without wearing masks and not social distancing, how are you going to handle that? What is your social media plan for that? When I worked at the American Heart Association years and years ago, during their scientific sessions, this was their biggest conference of the year, and it had maybe, I don't know, thousands of people. Again, it was their biggest conference of the year. And again, this is the American Heart Association. And some of these doctors were on a smoke break. They were on a smoke break, and somebody took a picture. Somebody took a picture of these doctors smoking with their American Heart Association badges on, and that got leaked into the press. And this was before social media. This was maybe about 15 years ago. So this was before Twitter and before Facebook. And they had to come up with a plan on how they're going to handle that. And it was just like, well, we can't stop our attendees from doing what they know is bad for their health. And again, these were doctors that were smoking and they knew it was bad for their health, obviously. And they still did it. But they did it right in front of the American Heart Association sign with the American Heart Association conference badges on. And that got leaked. So if something gets leaked to your on Twitter or on social media of your attendees not social distancing, not wearing a mask, and this is a big conference for you, you have to have a plan for that, and you have to directly and for sure communicate that to your attendees, what they can and cannot do. So the next slide. Physical distancing. So we're going to talk only about the first item today was the physical distancing, if I can say that properly. So registration, that's the first thing. How are we going to handle registration? It is best to have contactless registration. If you can, send badges in the mail beforehand or have something where they can just scan on their phone. A lot of conferences are doing away with the paper badge to reduce the amount of contact that you have to, you have to touch the badge, you have to hand it to somebody, you have to put it in a plastic sleeve or put a lanyard on it. So some of them are doing away with our badges, or they're using their phone as a badge and they can scan a QR code. So you have to decide what you're going to do about registration. Also, you want to minimize the queue at the registration booth. You don't want people standing in line. And also, it makes a better attendee experience if people can just go through the queue really quickly without having to wait in line. So again, figuring out a way to have contactless badging or contactless check-in during your registration, that would be the best. Contact tracing. So this one is a really interesting one. This is what a lot of conferences are doing now, and people are really, really interested in contact tracing. And how it works is each person is issued like a special badge and a lanyard, and that badge has like a chip in it. It's logged via Bluetooth, and when attendees come in close proximity with each other, the badge picks it up. So if I get close to someone, 3 feet away, the badge tells me they talk to one another somehow through technology that I'm next to, Mary Jane, and I came into contact with Mary Jane. So that's how they're doing contact tracing. And the data is only sent in if there's any type of virus transmission. So if someone gets sick, they can get that person's badge and figure out who all were contacted, and they can figure out where the source of that issue is. It's pretty genius, actually. It's really fascinating to know how they do the contact tracing at a conference. So you may want to implement contact tracing at your conference, just depending on how the size of it, and depending on your budget, to figure out if anyone is possibly would be exposed at your event. So, crowd density guidelines. We now have to figure out how many attendees can fit into your conference or into your venue with the new guidelines, with the new COVID guidelines. So as of yesterday, I heard on the radio, I heard listening to NPR that the World Health Organization now has said people can just, they can be 3 feet away from one another. You don't have to be 6 feet away from one another. Well, okay, well, that's great. It changes every day, but so now it's 3 feet, but we're still using the 6 feet rule. So with the new with the new crowd density guidelines, you have to factor in 28 feet per person. So that's like a 6 feet perimeter around each person. So each person now takes up 28 feet of space. And that's how you have to plan your floor plan and layout and your conference to figure out what your capacity is by calculating that 28 feet of space. So there are crowd density calculators. Some people can do it by hand or in their head or whatever. I would just rather use a crowd density calculator, and a lot of them are out there now. That is a link to the crowd density calculator. It is the expogroup.com/crowd density calculator, and it's pretty good. It's pretty good. So what you need is the square footage of the whole venue. Your inaccessible space. So this is the space that will be taken up by exhibitor booths, by tables, by pop-up air spaces, whatever space is not accessible, you subtract that. It's also your square footage per person, which they're calculating at 28 feet per person. That's a huge person. Your number of personnel, your number of staff, your expected number of attendees, and you plot all that information in, and it'll tell you how many people can fit into your space. Actually, you don't put your expected number of attendees, it'll tell you. So you type in all that information, it's a little calculator, and it tells you, okay, you can fit 500 people, you can fit 1,000 people, you can fit 250 people in your space with all these numbers. So it's a pretty helpful tool. So, but I'm hoping that number of 28 feet per person gets reduced down. Right now, they're calculating based on 6 feet of distancing between each person. But again, like I said, the World Health Association just announced that we only need 3 feet per person. So maybe that number will be reduced. So thank you guys so much for joining me. If you're just now tuning in, today's topic is planning live events post-COVID and what we need to do and the rules and new guidelines that we need to follow to plan events post-COVID. So if you have any questions, please drop them in the chat. Thank you so much for being here, and make sure you give me a thumbs up. I really do appreciate that. So the next topic is staggering admission, the next item. So you want to make sure you stagger the admission, maybe divide registration into different time slots. You can also extend your opening hours. You can have, hey, we're opening the day before so people can register. We're going to be open earlier that day so people can register, depending on the size of your event. It's really helpful. And people can plan their day around it, because instead of having to go to registration at 9 o'clock, I can go to registration the day before, and it's always more helpful. For me, I like that. For planning, make sure you have signs, and more signs. The more signs you have, the better, but people don't read. So, hey, you got to put it in their face like 10 times, and then they may read like the 9th or 10th one, but one sign won't do. You have to have signs everywhere. So these are examples of signs. You can have floor cleans, you can have pop-up banners, you can have signs on the table, signs on the walls, just signs everywhere. Just letting people know what the rules are. 6 feet distance, wear your mask, one way in, one way out, just like a queue. You have an entrance and you have an exit. So people don't come back the same way they entered. You got to leave it you got to enter one way and leave another way. So make sure you have plenty of signs, and make sure that's part of your planning in your risk plan. So transportation, some events provide transportation around the venues. If you're using multiple venues, even with the transportation, you have to allow social distancing. I know you're in like a van and like really, but those are the rules. So I don't know. Have people sit every other seat. to maintain physical distancing, and every other row. I'm like, you can only get so many seats and so many rows in a van or a bus, but and you have to have a mask worn. But this will be helpful if you have people that'll be traveling. You can also have people who don't choose to take the chartered transportation, may walk or take an Uber or a Lyft. So, that's definitely up to them. But have that option for them and make sure you have to follow that rule. So every other seat and every other row. Conference rooms. Conference rooms are now able to have more people in them. So these rules may change slightly over the next few weeks, but right now they're still, like I said, allowing for 6 feet of distance between each person. So as you see in this picture, they have it set up where they have all the chairs 6 feet away, which has that 28-foot perimeter around each person. Like I was saying, each person has to have like 28 feet, which is a lot of space when you're trying to plan. But you have to follow the local distancing guidelines. So depending on what state you're in and what city you're in, they have different guidelines. Some states are a little lax, as we know, and some aren't. So you can also provide people with hands-free equipment, so they don't have to touch the microphones. You can have people streaming virtually, which we've been doing, and that's called like a hybrid event. Some people are streaming virtually to watch the event, and some people are present at the actual event. So you can do both ways. Eliminating handshakes. This is one that I actually like because shaking everyone's hand, it always grossed me out because, you don't know where people's hands have been. So I like that we have to eliminate handshakes, and I can give me a reason. I don't want to catch COVID, elbows, chin, maybe a fist bump, but maybe not. But make sure you have your signs that said, hey, please no handshaking to, prevent the spread. You propose alternate methods of greeting, and that can kind of be like a little fun way that you can engage your audience there too. Maybe you can say, tap toes or touch elbows or whatever you want to do. You can make it fun. So we don't want to spread germs. So food and beverage. So as you see in the picture, let me make it a little bit bigger for you. There are windows or barriers around the food and buffet area, and you can still have a buffet. So buffets have not gone away, but it's a service buffet. Some things may be prepackaged where they can just pick up, and other things are served, which I like better anyway. Again, I didn't like touching the utensils that 100 other people have touched. It was just kind of gross to me. So this is great. You have people behind the plastic, just like a Subway. I mean, we've all done it. Like I said, a Subway or Chipotle, there was glass and plastic before COVID, and there was a reason for that. So you go down the assembly line, someone makes your buffet plate, and that's also a way to not waste so much food, because some people would waste a lot of food. And when you're servicing out the food, it's portion control. You can always go back for more, but this just ensures that you don't waste a lot of food. And make sure, the seating areas are arranged with, if it's a round table, that maybe I think there's 2 or 3 people at a round instead of the 6 that we used to have at a round. Make cashless payments available. Cash is still king, but a lot of people don't want to use the cash because cash has a lot of germs, all right? A lot of germs. So the next one is monitoring and control. So who is going to be your COVID control monitor? You should have floor ambassadors and people around, safety ambassadors, to make sure that everybody's following the protocol, making sure that people have their mask on, making sure people are, washing their hands or using the hand sanitizer, are not gathering in groups. It's kind of being the COVID police, which people don't really like to do, and enforcing the rules and the enforcer. But unfortunately, it is necessary. You definitely want people to see that you are doing everything you can at your event to make sure that they're being safe and maintaining safety. So they have COVID compliance officers now, and it is a certification that you can get. And a lot of venues and some states are now requiring you to have a compliance officer at your event, depending on the size of the event. And those people, it's a non-union position, so you don't have to pay an outrageous amount of money for this person, but it does not replace a medic. Again, some venues in some states, in some situations, you're required to have some type of EMT or medic on site, depending on the size of your event, but you cannot say, oh, we have a medic, so we don't need a COVID compliance officer. You do. Now you need a medic and a compliance officer. So there are, again, like I said, there are people getting certifications for that. Some planners are getting it. I may get one. It's really quick and easy, and it just tells you, what you need to do to follow protocol and procedures during the event. So that's something new. You got to get a compliance officer. And that is it. Does anyone? Oh, I had some questions here. Oh, thank you, Angela. Thank you guys for joining me. I appreciate that. So that was all that I had today. If you have any questions, please feel free to contact me. I will be going over the other points in the presentation. And those were, let me see, let's go back to the top. Oh, there we go, right here. So today we just went over physical distancing. Next week, we're going over the hygiene requirements post-COVID. So there are a lot of cleaning measures and cleaning guidelines that we have to follow post-COVID, like how often things need to be cleaned, how often things need to be sanitized, how many people can touch something, all these extra cleaning hygiene guidelines. And we'll go over that on Friday. And again, the next few weeks, we'll do the protect and detect and the communication plan that you need to put together for your COVID, to include in your COVID protection plan. So again, thank you guys so much for joining me. I really do appreciate you being here. Make sure you tune in next week where I bring you more great info, and have a wonderful weekend. Bye.